Hey guys, imagine waking up tomorrow, checking your phone, and instead of the usual spam text from a number pretending to be Ronaldo and asking for money, you see the words, World War III has begun. Now don't worry, deep breaths, that's not happening. This is just a cozy little bedtime story, the kind with fewer fairy godmothers. Right now, you're safe. The chances of an actual global conflict breaking out tomorrow are about as likely as your uncle becoming a TikTok influencer. Technically possible, but let's not lose sleep over it. Tonight, we're diving into a purely hypothetical scenario. What if World War III broke out tomorrow? Not to scare you, not to stress you, but because the idea is fascinating. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you like what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always interesting seeing people from different places listening in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some background noise. And let's imagine a version of Earth that hits the metaphorical reset button in the loudest way possible. You're not in your bed anymore. You're standing outside on a cool, quiet morning. The air has that crisp edge to it, the kind that hints something's coming. Not a fart from your sibling. Something else, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Your phone vibrates. You think it's another fake Uber Eats promo code. It's not. It's news, the kind that makes your stomach tighten before you even open it. Something has happened, somewhere far away. But the words World War III are trending, and suddenly everything feels different. The world hasn't changed yet, but your perception has. Now let's pause, right here, because this is the point where everything starts. In any real-world global conflict scenario, day one doesn't begin with explosions. It begins with whispers, alerts, confusion. This is the day of headlines, statements and speculation. Governments scramble to hold press conferences. News anchors try to look calm while furiously Googling what DEFCON means. I'll get into that later. And people like you, you're watching, wondering, is this really happening? Or is this just another bad tweet that got out of control? Here's what most people don't realise. A modern world war wouldn't just be about soldiers and tanks. No, the first battlefield is your Wi-Fi signal. Cyber warfare would be the opening act. Banks freezing, power grids flickering, rumours flying faster than logic. You'd probably still have electricity, at least for now, but good luck using your credit card. You'll be standing in Woolies trying to buy a loaf of bread and a pack of toilet paper. Because somewhere deep in your primal brain, that feels important. And let's be clear, the average person wouldn't know what to do. Not really. You might Google emergency prep, but end up stuck watching a YouTube video titled How to Build a Bunker Out of Pool Noodles, because the algorithm has no chill. The truth is, modern humanity is spectacularly underprepared for global instability. Not because we're stupid, but because we've outsourced our survival instincts to apps. You don't know where your nearest bunker is. You probably don't even know where your passport is, but you know where your phone charger is. And honestly, that's the kind of energy we're bringing into this hypothetical. As day one unfolds, the world splits into two types of people. The ones glued to the news, refreshing Twitter like their lives depend on it, and the ones still at brunch, pretending none of this is happening because the pancakes are really good. For most people, life will look weirdly normal at first. The chaos is happening far away. On screens, in someone else's country, in someone else's nightmare. But there's a tension, like the pause before a storm, and you, poor insomniac listener, are in the middle of it, lying under your blanket, safe, warm, and wondering what it would feel like if everything changed. Would you feel panic? Maybe, but more likely you'd feel suspended, disconnected, the same way you feel when you wake up from a dream and can't quite remember if it was real. That's what day one of World War III would be like. Uncertain, surreal, and deeply, deeply weird. Airports would fill, gas stations would overflow, and somewhere in a government office, someone would be figuring out how to launch an emergency app that only half the population can download because it's incompatible with older phones. But still, most of the world, they'd be waiting. The war hasn't come to them yet. It's a distant fire on the horizon, and they're still making coffee, brushing their teeth, opening the fridge and staring blankly at a jar of pickles like it has answers. You see, wars don't start the way they used to. It's not one big explosion and then instant chaos. It's slow. It's digital. It's psychological. And the first 24 hours are the most dangerous, not because of the violence, but because of the decisions made in boardrooms, bunkers, and Zoom calls with very bad lighting. Now, if you're thinking, okay, I'm still not sleepy, let's turn this up a notch. Don't worry, we're not going into combat mode. You're not storming beaches or hiding in trenches. You're just observing, floating above it all like some omniscient couch potato with a curiosity problem. And I promise the rest of this journey gets even stranger. So let's recap. It's tomorrow, a hypothetical version of tomorrow. You're still safe, still warm, and the world has just taken its first step into a situation that, thankfully, will probably never happen. But what if it did? Stick around, because in part 2 we'll explore what happens next, when the tension breaks, when the first move is made, when the world, having tried very hard to avoid it, finally realises it's too late. But until then, you're okay. You're here. You're in your bed. And that jar of pickles still has no answers. So the headlines have been swirling, your phone is hot from all the panic scrolling, and the world feels like it's playing an elaborate game of geopolitical Jenga. But still, nothing has happened yet. It's all tension, suspense, like the moment before someone drops the beat in a techno song that started 3 minutes ago and is still just a vibrating hum. And then it happens. The first move. Not necessarily a missile. Not a dramatic invasion with soldiers pouring over a hill, like it's 1942, and the movie budget was unlimited. No, the real first move is subtle, quiet, unimpressive even. A blackout. Not everywhere. Just a handful of cities, big ones. Suddenly the lights go out in places that are never dark. Skyscrapers fade to black like someone pulled the plug on civilization. People try to shrug it off. Maybe it's just a power surge. Maybe someone tripped over a cable the size of a school bus. But deep down, they know. The game has started. Here's how modern conflict works. You don't announce yourself with a roar. You whisper into the internet and watch as the world trembles. Cyber attacks knock out power grids, water treatment plants, GPS systems. Your Uber Eats app, useless. Your maps glitching. Your grandma's online bingo night, cancelled. And it's not even overkill. It's targeted. Because in this hypothetical future we're gently snuggling into, the new weapons of war are data and silence. Imagine it. You live in a city where the traffic lights go dark, ATMs freeze, and phones only show SOS in the corner. The silence isn't peaceful. It's electric. Like the moment before a lightning strike. You go outside. The sky looks normal. The trees are still there. Your neighbour is still yelling at their dog, as usual, but something is off. The world feels paused, like it's waiting for something to shatter the calm. People start lining up at petrol stations, not because they need fuel, but because they saw someone else do it and figured it was probably smart. Humanity's greatest survival instinct is mimicking the person ahead of them in line. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, military command centres around the globe are blinking with activity. Not explosions, not shootouts. Just men and women in uniform staring at very expensive screens, waiting. This is the most dangerous moment. Not the fighting. Not yet. But the waiting. Because every country is trying to figure out if they just witnessed a glitch. Or a warning. Now let's pause for a moment and remember. You, dear listener, are not in one of these command centres. You're lying down, probably with one leg awkwardly hanging off the bed, and a pillow that insists on being warm no matter how many times you flip it. You're not making world-altering decisions. You're imagining them from a safe, snuggly distance. And this is where it gets complicated. Because one wrong interpretation, one misread signal, and the dominoes start to fall. But not all at once. Modern warfare isn't a sprint. It's more like a passive-aggressive chess game played by people who haven't slept in 3 days. You'll notice something odd as the day continues. Flights start vanishing from the sky. Not falling, just disappearing from radar. Commercial planes rerouted. Airports flooded with confused travellers who just want to get to their cousin's wedding in Melbourne. Trains are delayed. Subways stop. The infrastructure we all pretend is stable starts to feel fragile. And still you won't hear sirens, you won't see tanks. You'll just feel the tension. Like when someone asks if you're mad and you say, "I'm fine," but clench your jaw so hard your molars turn into diamonds. At this point, world leaders start issuing statements. You'll hear a lot of phrases like mutual restraint, international dialogue, and unprecedented circumstances, all delivered with the enthusiasm of someone reading the terms and conditions of a printer manual. But nobody really knows what's happening. That's the point. The fog of war doesn't begin when the shooting starts. It begins in the confusion. And right now the fog is rolling in like morning mist over a haunted lake. Now let's talk about you again. It's late. You're trying to sleep, but this fictional world is getting uncomfortably interesting. What do you do if something like this ever actually happened? Well, you don't panic. That's first, because panic is contagious and wildly unproductive. You start simple. Fill a few water bottles. Make sure your phone's charged. Maybe locate your passport for the first time since you turned 18 and forgot where you put it. Do you need to flee? No, you need to be ready to think clearly. Because the truth is, in modern conflict, the safest people are the calmest ones. The ones who don't rush into crowds. The ones who don't follow every rumour. The ones who take a deep breath and remember that the world has danced on this edge before. Many, many times. And didn't fall off. The power might flicker, the internet might lag, but you're still in control of one thing: how you respond. And if you're thinking, okay, what if I'm not at home when all this happens? Then congratulations, you're thinking ahead. And ahead-thinking people tend to survive, thrive, and sleep better. Eventually. So now night falls. The world is still spinning. Nothing exploded, but the atmosphere is thick with what-ifs. And you, well, you're still lying there. Safe, comfortable. The fridge is still humming. Your dog is probably dreaming about tennis balls. And even though the news won't stop buzzing, your eyes are starting to close. In the next part, we'll look at what would happen if things escalated. If someone, somewhere, crossed a line they couldn't uncross. But not yet. Right now, just rest. You're informed. You're curious, but more importantly, you're calm. And maybe a little hungry. But that's for tomorrow's version of you to deal with. So, you've made it through the day. You've survived the headlines, the eerie silence, and the unsettling realization that your emergency preparedness kit consists mostly of a flashlight with dead batteries and 3 half-melted mints from your glove box. Well done. But here's where things change. The first actual strike doesn't come with fireworks. It's not cinematic. It's not even loud, unless you happen to be very, very close to it. In which case, and let me be extremely clear, you would not be listening to a bedtime video right now. The first strike is usually surgical, precise, almost boring if you ignore the whole global consequences part. Think, a military base in the middle of nowhere, a few missile silos, a radar installation that just got very unlucky, the kind of targets that matter strategically but are completely uninteresting unless you're a drone operator or a very enthusiastic map collector. Governments don't start with cities. That's important. Cities mean civilians. Civilians mean headlines. Headlines mean consequences. Nobody wants to be the first one who goes full chaos mode and ends up as the villain in the history books or the very awkward UN Zoom meeting that follows. So what happens? Well, somewhere in the world, a building that was once just a dot on a map turns into a cloud of dust. And suddenly, silence turns into noise. Planes take off. Alarms go off in bunkers. Satellites blink awake. Submarines that were sleeping peacefully under the ocean start moving like something out of a thriller. You know, if thrillers had less witty banter and more unreadable radar screens. And here's the crazy part. Most people still won't know. Not right away. You'll be sitting at home, still trying to load at Instagram, still wondering why your Uber hasn't moved in 20 minutes. And meanwhile, military commands are being sent that haven't been used since before you were born. Back in your world, things will feel weirdly calm, but eerie. Like the power's still on, the lights are still glowing, but everything feels off. You look out your window, and the sky is that washed-out grey that makes everything feel like the end credits of a documentary you didn't understand. Your neighbours are quiet, the streets are oddly still, and you swear the birds are acting differently. Are they in on it? Probably not. But at this point, you're not ruling anything out. And now the world is divided into two mindsets. Mindset 1. It started. We're doomed. Time to panic buy every canned good known to man and dig a hole in the backyard. Mindset 2. It's fine. Everyone's overreacting. This is just media hype. And even if it is serious, someone else will fix it. Probably. Hopefully. You, of course, are lying in bed, which is the most reasonable place to be. Because here's the truth. There is nothing productive you can do at 11:47 p.m. during a global military escalation other than hydrate, charge your devices, and maybe clear out that mysterious drawer in your kitchen that you keep saying you'll organise. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about what actually happens behind the curtain. In a real-world modern conflict, military alliances click into gear, quietly but rapidly. Countries start whispering to each other, asking the digital equivalent of, "Are we doing this?" and "You in?" This is the phase where mistakes matter most, because one misinterpreted move, one poorly worded press release, or one trigger-happy radar technician could send the entire world spiralling. And trust me, radar technicians have a lot of power when everyone's nervous. So what are you supposed to do, you human meatball of anxiety wrapped in a weighted blanket? Well, let's make it simple. You don't need a bunker. You don't need to move to the mountains and live off the land with only a water filter and 6 protein bars. You need perspective. The world, even in conflict, moves slower than your imagination. This isn't a Hollywood blockbuster. It's more like a very tense, very bureaucratic group chat that's one emoji away from disaster. You check the news again. Still vague, still unclear. The phrase strategic response is being thrown around a lot, which could mean anything from military action to someone typing a strongly worded email in all caps. And now comes the emotional shift. This is when people stop doom scrolling and start asking the real question. What do I do next? And the answer is beautifully boring. You sleep. Yes, seriously, because being well rested makes you smarter, more rational. And if the world does wake up to chaos tomorrow, you want to be the person with a clear head. Not the one crying in the supermarket aisle because all the good granola is gone. And by the way, if you're the kind of person who thinks they'd be a hero in a situation like this, charging through the streets with a flashlight and an inspiring speech, you're probably not. The real heroes are calm, prepared, and not actively tweeting conspiracy theories while eating uncooked pasta directly from the box. So right now, let your brain do what it needs to do. Let it visualize the chaos, sure, but also let it float above it. Because even in the worst of times, most people will still wake up, make coffee, complain about the weather, feed their cat. Life is stubborn like that. It refuses to stop. And you're doing great, you're learning, you're curious. And your blanket has never felt more like a shield against the outside world. In the next part, we'll dive into the big one. Nuclear weapons. Not in a scary way. In a calm, sleepy, let's gently explain the end of civilization kind of way. But before we go there, just breathe. The odds of this happening, still ridiculously small. Like smaller than your chance of being hit by a vending machine levels of small. You're here, you're safe, and your room smells vaguely of lavender and existential dread. Perfect bedtime conditions. Sleep is coming. You're ready for it. And if not, we've got a lot more chaos to calmly describe. Okay, so we've tiptoed our way through blackouts, cyber attacks, and passive-aggressive global tension. We've reached the part where everyone starts nervously whispering the same word. Nuclear. It's the boogeyman of modern warfare. The word that makes politicians stutter, news anchors sweat. And your Aunt Karen posts 17 Facebook statuses in all caps. But before we go any further, let's make something very clear. The actual chance of a nuclear war happening tomorrow is incredibly low. Like finding a parking spot at Kmart on Christmas Eve level low. You're far more likely to get hit by a falling vending machine, while winning the lottery, while riding a unicycle, blindfolded. So relax, this isn't real. It's just a peaceful bedtime simulation of global catastrophe. Now let's answer the big question. If someone pushed the big red button, you know, the one we all imagine exists behind a wall of Secret Service agents and fingerprint scanners, what would actually happen? Well, it depends. A single nuclear strike wouldn't mean instant world-ending chaos. No mushroom cloud domino effect. No instant Mad Max apocalypse. It would be terrifying, yes. Devastating, absolutely. But the world wouldn't disappear in a puff of radioactive dust. That's not how this works. In reality, nuclear weapons are more like terrifying chess pieces than bombs. They're designed to be seen, not used. They're a threat, not a plan. A very expensive, glowing "Don't mess with us" sign written in radioactive cursive. So let's say one is used. Hypothetically, maybe a remote military site is hit. Maybe a warning shot. Something meant to say, "We're serious," without saying, "Let's all die now." The world holds its breath. Every world leader suddenly becomes very interested in de-escalation. Meetings are called. Planes are grounded. The phrase, "mutually assured destruction" trends for the first time since 1983. And the good news? This moment, the moment after the first strike, is when the world usually snaps into sense. Because every country with a big red button knows that once you go full nuclear, nobody wins. Not even the cockroaches. Everyone loses. Not in a dramatic Hollywood explosion way, but in a slow, tragic, society crumbles while people argue about toilet paper kind of way. So no, the nukes wouldn't start flying like fireworks. At least not immediately. And most governments would do everything in their power to stop that from happening. Because deep down, even the most powerful people are still human. They still have homes and families, and at least one pet they probably like more than the average citizen. Now let's talk about what you would experience. Assuming you're not within the blast radius, and statistically, you almost definitely wouldn't be, your life would get weird, not exploded. First, there'd be the alerts, emergency broadcasts on your phone. Sirens, the kind of warnings that sound like someone dropped a toaster in a whale's stomach. Then the news hits, the actual confirmation. A nuclear strike has occurred. You look out your window. The sky looks normal. The air smells the same. Your neighbour is still watering his lawn like we're not in the middle of a hypothetical, world-ending scenario. You check social media. It's chaos. People arguing, spreading rumours, posting blurry screenshots of maps and typing, "praying for Earth" in Comic Sans. But here's what wouldn't happen. You wouldn't suddenly mutate. You wouldn't grow a third arm. Your power wouldn't cut out unless your grid was targeted. Life weirdly would look the same, just heavier. Like someone added a new layer of anxiety to the atmosphere. Let's demystify the nuclear bomb thing a bit more. First of all, they're not as all-consuming as people imagine. The immediate blast radius? Horrifying, but not planet-ending. Fallout? Dangerous but localised. The real fear isn't that one bomb will destroy the world. It's that one bomb would trigger 20 more, which would trigger 200 more. That's the fear, the chain reaction. But again, this has never happened. In over 70 years of nuclear weapons existing, not one has been used in war since 1945. Not one. Because every country knows, once it starts, it doesn't stop. Let's say, again hypothetically, that more than one nuke gets launched. The first few hit military targets. Maybe one city, maybe two. Governments go full DEFCON whatever. And now the real race begins, not to bomb each other, but to stop it. To hit the brakes. Diplomatic backchannels go crazy. Emergency calls are made between leaders who, just days ago, couldn't agree on what pizza toppings to order. Because the world doesn't want to end, it's got too much going on. TikTok trends, leftover lasagna, those tiny frogs that wear hats on Instagram. We're too busy, too stubborn, too invested in the next season of whatever to give up now. And you're still here. Still in your bed, you haven't moved. Because this is all just a story. A weird, calming, slightly absurd mental simulation designed to make you sleepy, not anxious. You might wonder, would I even survive? The answer? Almost definitely. Especially if you live outside major cities. The majority of the Earth wouldn't be hit. Most places would experience panic, shortages and confusion. But not destruction. This isn't some automatic extinction switch. The planet doesn't just vanish in a puff of cinematic smoke. What would it feel like? Surreal. Like the world got turned upside down in slow motion. Supermarkets would be crowded. Banks would close. People would suddenly start remembering they once read about Morse code. Society wouldn't collapse, it would just stagger, stumble, cough a bit. But it would keep going, because that's what people do, and tomorrow after the chaos would still arrive. Maybe quieter, maybe different, but it would come. In the next part, we'll imagine what happens after the worst. What if the unthinkable happened, and the world really did take the hit? What does society look like in the aftermath? Spoiler, it involves a lot less Netflix and a lot more bartering for instant noodles. But that's for later. Right now your body is warm, your mind is floating. The world outside your window is dark, calm and boring, just the way we like it. And your pillow still isn't cold, but that's not your fault. That's just physics being a punk. You're safe. You're okay. And the vending machine apocalypse is still, statistically, more likely. So, it happened. The world flinched. The line was crossed, the button was pressed, and now somewhere out there, a mushroom cloud curls into the sky like a very angry balloon animal. The worst-case scenario has unfolded. Humanity has officially dropped the Wi-Fi router of peace and cracked the screen. But here's the thing they don't show in movies. The morning after the end of the world still looks like morning. The sun still rises, birds still chirp, although maybe with a little less enthusiasm. Your neighbour still insists on mowing the lawn, even though we're hypothetically mid-apocalypse. The sky hasn't turned red. Zombies aren't clawing at your door. And no, the air isn't glowing green like it's been dipped in radioactive Mountain Dew. You're alive. You're safe. And now begins the strangest chapter of all. Surviving a world that just tried to end itself, but didn't quite succeed. Let's imagine you live in a quiet town, nowhere near a major city. No direct strikes, no firestorms, just fallout. Of the social kind. The news says stay indoors, airports are shut down, supermarkets have queues so long they bend the laws of geometry. People are panic buying whatever's left, including things that make no practical sense, like scented candles and 15 jars of marmalade. Electricity, maybe still working. Internet, sluggish but alive. And your phone battery, of course it's at 6%. Because some things never change. Here's what society does in the aftermath of catastrophe. It limps forward, stumbles, gets awkward, then tries to make eye contact with hope. Not everyone knows what to do, but someone always does. Someone organises, someone bakes bread, someone sets up a barter system in the local park with a handwritten sign that says, "Trade canned beans for AA." Batteries. The most valuable resource? Information. People want to know what's real, what's next, and whether it's safe to go outside without turning into a glow stick. Governments release statements. Experts go on live streams. Everyone suddenly remembers what Geiger counters are. And Twitter? Oh, it's still chaos. Only now it's chaos with more conspiracy theories and fewer cat videos. Let's talk about radiation for a second, but gently. Fallout sounds terrifying, but the danger depends entirely on location, wind, and whether or not you've built your house out of tinfoil. Most people would never even come into contact with high radiation. If you're hundreds of kilometres from the blast zone, your main concern is not glowing in the dark. It's boredom, waiting, wondering when life goes back to normal. And it will, eventually. In fact, one of the most surprising things about post-nuclear scenarios is how quickly normal creeps back in. The human brain is ridiculously good at adapting. One day you're hiding in a basement, watching emergency updates, and the next you're arguing with someone over the last packet of Tim Tams. People will still joke, still cry, still live. Now let's say you're in one of the affected areas, not ground zero, but close enough to feel the effects. What do? Simple. You follow instructions. You find shelter, not some high-tech underground lair, just a place with thick walls and no windows. You stay indoors, you eat your emergency snacks, and you wait. Most radioactive particles decay fast. The dangerous stuff? It weakens by the hour. After 2 or 3 days, you can step outside. Not for a picnic, just to see the sky. And weirdly, it's still beautiful. Grass still grows, trees still sway. The world, despite everything, keeps spinning. Now the big question. What's next? This is where humanity reveals its weirdest superpower. Rebuilding. We are, at our core, stubborn. We rebuild after floods, after earthquakes, after every natural and unnatural disaster. We hold funerals, we tell stories, we fix power lines and plant new gardens, and argue about how things should have been handled. all while sharing water bottles and weird instant noodles from the back of the pantry. New rules start to form. Temporary governments, peace talks, emergency aid. Countries that were enemies a week ago now emailing each other like divorced parents trying to co-host a barbecue. The threat of escalation fades. Everyone's tired. Everyone wants out. And the idea of pressing another button suddenly feels incredibly stupid. And what about you? You go outside. Carefully, the air smells clean again. You walk to the end of the street. The world is quieter now. No planes overhead. No car horns. Just silence. With the occasional magpie that still thinks it's the boss of the neighbourhood. And in that moment you realise something strange. You're grateful, not that it happened, obviously, but that you're still here. That life didn't end. That, despite everything, you still get to breathe and exist. And think about weird stuff like how jellyfish don't have brains but still somehow vibe. Because life, like your stubborn uncle at Christmas, refuses to shut up. And now we move into recovery. In the next part, we'll explore how society rebuilds. What systems collapse, what survives. And yes, what your new job might be in a post-global conflict world. Spoiler, it might involve goats, and a surprising amount of rice. But for now, stay warm. Your bed is soft, your lights are still on, and even in this fictional future, you've made it through the worst. Sleep easy, vending machine survivor. So, the dust has settled, the alarms have gone quiet. The world didn't end, it just rebooted. Badly. Like Windows 98 trying to open a TikTok. But it's trying, and that counts for something. Now begins the part no one ever glamorizes. The cleanup. The recovery. The rebuilding of civilization. Fueled entirely by duct tape, questionable optimism, and an overwhelming number of town hall meetings. Let's imagine you're one of the lucky billions whose neighbourhood was mostly untouched. You've got walls, you've got food. You've even got a neighbour who insists on organising a community garden, even though no one has seen a tomato in 6 months. What happens now? Well, first you learn how fragile modern systems really are. The internet, spotty, the power grid, flickering like it's powered by vibes. Government services, down to a team of tired volunteers, and one guy who keeps calling everything resilient infrastructure, even though he just fixed a sink with a shoelace. Your phone still works, kind of. Texts go through, calls drop. And social media is now 30% useful information, 70% people trying to sell their bathtub water for trade. Because welcome to the barter economy. That's right, cash is out. Convenience is dead. And for now, everything operates on good old-fashioned awkward negotiations. You've got 6 cans of spaghetti and a pack of AA batteries. Your neighbour has toothpaste and a very smug attitude. Let the games begin. Markets pop up. Not the usual weekend kind with food trucks and live music, but open spaces where people stand under tarps, swapping matches for rice and hoping no one brings cryptocurrency into the conversation. You become hyper-aware of value. Salt is gold. Clean socks are luxury. And if you've got toilet paper, you're basically royalty. It's weirdly refreshing. Terrifying, yes. But also kind of beautiful. Because people talk again. Face to face. Without screens, without filters. They laugh, cry, share stories. Someone probably starts a ukulele circle. You're not sure if you love or hate it, but you hum along anyway. Then there's energy. Generators are king. Solar panels are suddenly the hottest commodity since sliced bread, which no one has, because yeast is now mythical. Communities pool resources. They learn to conserve. Lights go out early. People adapt. And food? It's simple. Root vegetables. Tins. Rice. Beans. Suddenly you realise your emergency supply of microwave popcorn was not the survival flex you thought it was. You learn to cook over fire. You eat lentils like it's a personality trait. You trade for spices and feel like a medieval merchant when you score half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Water's sacred. Bottles are shared like ancient relics. Rainwater is collected with more enthusiasm than any influencer giveaway. Someone in the neighbourhood becomes the water guy. You don't know where he came from or how he has so many buckets, but he's now the local celebrity. And what about work? What's a job in a world where office buildings are empty and laptops are mostly being used to prop open windows? Jobs now fall into three categories: useful, farmers, fixers, foragers, people who can build stuff from sticks and hope. Organisers, the people who somehow manage food lines, shift schedules, and remind everyone not to drink the pool water. Weirdly adapted, the guy who used to manage NFTs but now breeds chickens and has never looked more fulfilled. You, of course, find your niche. Maybe you're good at organising supplies. Maybe you teach kids. Maybe you write bedtime stories about World War III to help people fall asleep during the quiet nights. We see you. And let's talk about those quiet nights, because they are quiet. No traffic, no planes, just stars and silence. You can hear the wind now, the trees, your own thoughts, which is either peaceful or terrifying, depending on how much overthinking you're into. People gather around fires, tell stories, the real kind, not filtered through likes and hashtags. They remember what life was, what it could still be. And somehow, despite everything, laughter returns. Now governments, or what's left of them, begin coordinating. Aid arrives. Relief crews roll in with supplies, doctors, tech support. And an unreasonable amount of paper forms no one wants to fill out. They bring news. Who survived? What's next when rebuilding starts for real? Borders change. Alliances shift. But it all happens slowly, cautiously. Like the world is learning to trust itself again. And in all this, you realise something. The world didn't end. It just got very, very weird. And maybe, just maybe, that's okay, because weird is something humans are very, very good at surviving. Next up, we talk about long-term adaptation. What does the next year look like? What changes stick? What technologies rise from the rubble? And why is everyone suddenly into goats? But for now, let that thought settle. You're here. You're adapting. You're weirdly thriving. Your bed still creaks. The blanket's still too warm on one side. But life, against all odds, is moving forward. One awkward, bartered can of chickpeas at a time. So it's been a year. One whole, strange, stumbling post-World War III year. You've gone from panic buying baked beans to confidently trading hand-woven socks for half a turnip. Progress. And here's what's wild. The world didn't rebuild into a utopia, but it also didn't dissolve into Mad Max either. Turns out reality is much less cinematic and way more practical. People got to work. Structures were rebuilt. Systems reconnected. But everything's different now. Softer. Stranger. Slightly more goat-based than anyone predicted. Let's take a look around. First, the cities. The ones that survived without direct strikes are shadows of what they used to be. Not ruins, just quieter. More human. You don't hear cars, you hear footsteps. You don't see flashing billboards. You see laundry drying between lampposts. Skyscrapers still stand, some hollowed out. Others repurposed into vertical gardens or makeshift shelters. A surprising number of pigeons have moved in and declared themselves landlords. Electricity has returned, sort of. Power is rationed. Hours are limited. But people adapt. Lights come on at nightfall and shut off before midnight. No more 3 a.m. Netflix binges. You either sleep or rediscover the dark art of reading. Technology didn't die. It just got demoted. The internet came back but slower. No more infinite scroll. Now it's a bit more like the early 2000s. Slow loading pages, functional forums, and one guy named Carl who somehow controls half the servers and responds to tech support tickets with weirdly encouraging advice. Social media, still alive but with new rules, less vanity, more usefulness. No one cares about brunch photos anymore. But if you know where to find aspirin, congratulations, you're an influencer now. Now let's talk about jobs. Because yes, jobs still exist. They're just practical now. People work in food distribution, clean water management, tech repair, and most importantly, morale. Someone always needs to tell bedtime stories, organise entertainment nights, or teach kids how to do long division, even though, let's be honest, no one truly understands it. Your job? Maybe you help maintain solar panels. Maybe you build bicycle generators. Maybe you've opened a barter cafe where people trade batteries for bread and poetry. Maybe, just maybe, you're the one who keeps everyone calm, who tells stories at night, who helps people fall asleep when the stars feel too loud. Let's go global for a moment. Borders have blurred, not because they don't matter, but because priorities shifted. Trade routes are based on who has clean energy and who has surplus rice. The world isn't one big kumbaya circle, but it's cooperating. Barely, but it counts. The new economy? Mostly local. Barter is still common, but some places have created new currencies, little wooden tokens, pressed coins or QR codes that only work during daylight hours. One town uses dried beans as currency. Another just uses favours. One guy made a mint trading haircut vouchers. He's now unofficially the Jeff Bezos of the post-apocalypse. And you'll be surprised by what came back quickly. Music, art, laughter. Someone built a community cinema using an old projector and a white sheet strung between trees. Every Friday, people gather to watch old DVDs and pretend they still don't know the ending to The Matrix. There's even a dating app now. It runs on solar Wi-Fi and requires both users to confirm they haven't traded livestock with each other. You swipe right, meet at the local barter tent, and compare potato rations over lukewarm rainwater tea. Romance. Oh, and medicine. Let's talk about that. Hospitals reopened. Makeshift ones, at first, then real ones. Doctors trained new medics. Pharmacists became legends. Plants became medicine again. People started learning which weeds heal headaches and which ones are just pretending. Every town has someone called Doc, whether they're licensed or not. You'd be amazed how far duct tape, clean bandages, and stubborn optimism can go. And schools? Still going. Kids still learn. Maybe not the way they used to, but somehow better. They learn how to fix things, how to grow food, how to navigate using the stars. Oh, and they still have homework because the universe insists on some level of suffering. The most beautiful part of it all, people changed. They're more patient, more present. They know their neighbours now. They look each other in the eyes instead of down at their phones. And they've remembered something the modern world had almost forgotten: community. And yes, people still argue, still complain, still gossip. Humanity didn't magically upgrade to sainthood, but they've learned what matters and what doesn't. And you're still here. You've survived 365 days of post-war awkwardness. You know how to trade, how to think clearly, how to find joy in small things, like a warm blanket, or a working flashlight, or the smell of baking bread made from 4 mysterious ingredients and 1 suspiciously cheerful goat. In the next part, we'll talk about nature. What happens to the environment after humanity takes a very long pause. Spoiler, it thrives. And yes, there are penguins involved, but for now, Mao, you're okay. The world outside is strange, but the one inside your mind is calm. Your eyelids are heavy, your thoughts are slowing, and your pillow still hasn't figured out how to be cold on both sides at the same time. You're safe, you're adapting. You're quietly thriving in a world that tried to collapse, and then didn't, one soft breath at a time. So, it's been a year since World War III almost ended everything, and while humanity was busy trading canned beans for socks and rediscovering the joys of conversation, something surprising happened in the background. The Earth exhaled. With industries offline, planes grounded and cars mostly abandoned for bicycles and feet, the planet took the deepest breath it's had in centuries. It's like Mother Nature finally got the house to herself, lit a candle, played lo-fi beats and started tidying up the mess we left behind. Let's start with the sky. Remember smog? That hazy grey smear across city skylines that always made sunsets look like Instagram filters gone wrong? Gone. Poof. The air is clean now. Stars returned like they forgot something. Even city kids who thought Orion was just a shoe brand are suddenly amateur stargazers. Birds came back, loudly, with opinions. Some of them are new species we thought were extinct. Others are just regular pigeons acting dramatic. But they're everywhere, singing, nesting, occasionally stealing snacks from outdoor barter markets like tiny, feathery raccoons. The oceans? Bluer, calmer, less plastic, fewer boats. Dolphins casually started showing up near coastal towns like uninvited guests who brought the good vibes and none of the drama. Coral reefs, slowly coming back. Fish, bolder than ever. Nature, it turns out, is really good at bouncing back. When we stopped messing with it, forests expanded, trees grew thicker, greener. Some areas that used to be farmland or parking lots are now wild again. Even city parks turned feral, benches overtaken by vines, squirrels running government now. Probably. And the animals? Oh, they're thriving. With humans inside, wildlife got brave. Bears wandered into towns. Deer took over suburban driveways. Somewhere, a goose declared itself mayor of a roundabout. No one contested it. Frankly, we were afraid. And yes, penguins. Why? Because it's comforting to imagine penguins doing well, waddling peacefully, unbothered by the chaos of human geopolitics. Somewhere on a chilly coast, they're just vibing, swimming, dancing, looking like they're wearing tiny tuxedos at the fanciest apocalypse party. Let's talk weather. Without all the carbon emissions, the climate chills out. Not instantly, but noticeably. Extreme events start to slow. Rain patterns soften. The sky feels lighter. The seasons settle into something that feels like a rhythm again, not a breakdown. And plants? They're everywhere. Things that haven't grown in years pop up through cracks in sidewalks. Rooftops bloom, balconies overflow. Even the loneliest corners of cities become jungles of weeds, moss and dandelions with no regard for zoning regulations. And people? They notice. Kids play outside. Adults grow things. Flowers become currency. Herbal tea becomes an obsession. One guy starts a podcast about backyard oregano that gets wildly popular. Someone else teaches mushroom foraging and becomes a local celebrity known only as Spore Daddy. It's not just the environment recovering, it's the relationship between us and the planet. For the first time in a long time, humans aren't dominating nature. We're sharing space with it, watching it, learning from it, even respecting it a little. Now let's talk about cities that were directly hit. The areas near former war zones. You'd expect nothing but ruin, right? But here's the strange truth about radiation. It fades, slowly. And plants don't care. Trees grow in abandoned places. Flowers bloom next to broken walls. Nature moves in like a quiet tenant. Respectful, patient, surprisingly efficient. In some places, green life comes back before the first human footstep ever does. Even the animals return. Wolves, foxes, rabbits, no signs, no questions. They just move back in and start rebuilding their little animal societies while we're still arguing over how to restart the economy. And you notice all of it. You've got a small garden now, a few leafy things, a stubborn tomato plant, and a basil bush that's clearly out for world domination. You never cared about plants before. But now you talk to them like they're co-workers. You give them names. You celebrate the first sprout like it's a royal birth. The world is greener, quieter, slower. Not perfect, but better in unexpected ways. The air smells fresh again, like soil after rain, like possibility. And somewhere deep inside, you realise something. The world needed a reset. And while the way it happened was catastrophic, unavoidable, and deeply, deeply dumb, this part, this unexpected breath of wild beauty, this part is worth holding on to. In the next part, we'll explore what it feels like to be human in this new world. Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, even. What happens to us when the noise goes quiet? When routine disappears? When we finally have to sit with ourselves? But for now, breathe. You're okay. You're alive. The sky above you is clear. The air in your lungs is clean. And a pigeon just made eye contact with you and nodded. You're not sure what it meant, but you feel deeply respected. Sleep easy. The earth is healing. And so are you. So here we are. The bombs have stopped falling. The sky is clear. The barter economy is thriving in all its chaotic glory. But now something strange begins. Something quieter than conflict and just as powerful. Re-entry. Not into society, but into your own mind. Because for the first time in years, maybe ever, life has slowed to a crawl. No more email notifications. No more commute. No more 24-hour news cycle convincing you that if you don't panic about 12 things before breakfast, you're slacking as a global citizen. It's just you, your thoughts, and the occasional goose fight outside your window. And that's when things get real. See, humanity is excellent at action. We love doing, building, fixing, running from fires, literal or metaphorical. But when everything stops, when the dust settles and the silence stretches long enough to hear your own breath, that's when the real work begins. Emotional repair, psychological recalibration, and, if we're being honest, a weird amount of crying while chopping onions. Let's talk about what this looks like. At first, it's rest. Deep, guilt-free, glorious rest. People sleep like they haven't in years. 12 hours, 14. Dreams come back. Vivid, strange, sometimes unsettling. You wake up in the middle of the night after dreaming about your Year 6 math teacher riding a camel through a supermarket. And somehow, it feels important. Then comes the reflection. People start remembering. The little things. The lives they had before the world snapped. The jobs they hated. The relationships they neglected. The hobbies they gave up because there wasn't time. Now, there's nothing but time. And it's uncomfortable. You start to ask the big questions. Who am I without a job title? What do I actually like doing? Why did I ever think a $14 acai bowl was worth it? Some people struggle. Mental health becomes a quiet epidemic. But this time, it's not ignored. Communities step up. People check in. You go on long walks with someone you barely knew last year and now talk to like they're your emotional support llama. You sit around fires and share stories you've never told anyone. You grieve, not just for lives lost, but for the version of yourself that didn't make it through. You mourn the comfort of routine, the illusion of control, the fantasy that tomorrow was always guaranteed. But something else happens too. You grow. Not in a corny, you've been on a journey kind of way, in a messy, awkward, very human way. You become more honest, less filtered, more patient with others, a bit less patient with nonsense. You start enjoying silence. You stop reaching for your phone the second there's a lull in conversation. You actually have conversations. And emotions, remember those? They get weird at first. You cry at dumb things, like a really good apple, or when someone saves you the last biscuit, or when a child hands you a rock and says it's lucky. Your heart, once wrapped in layers of sarcasm and corporate emails, begins to unfold. You laugh, deep belly laughs, not because things are better, but because you're still here. And that's ridiculous and miraculous at the same time. You start seeing beauty again. Not the kind that's filtered and edited and posted with the perfect caption. Real beauty, moss on stone, wind in tall grass, the sound of someone humming a song they don't realise they remember. You start to rebuild something inside yourself. Hope, not the big world peace kind, the small sneaky kind. The hope that maybe, despite everything, there's something ahead that's worth walking toward. Let's talk about guilt for a second, because it shows up too. Why did you survive? Why did your home stay standing? Why are you sitting here, in bed with a warm blanket and a full belly, while others lost everything? That's natural. That's grief in disguise. You carry it, quietly. But here's the thing. The best way to honour survival is to use it, to live fully, kindly, weirdly, messily, to help others, to share what you have, even if what you have is just time, or a story, or that last slightly stale biscuit you were saving. You become part of something again. Not a nation, not a work, a community, and eventually, a future. Because that's what this whole messy, emotional reboot is leading to, the future. The one we get to build, not from ambition, but from wisdom. The future that remembers what mattered most when everything else fell apart. In the next part, we'll explore what that future might look like. The technologies that survive. The philosophies that stick. The way people start designing a new world from the rubble of the old. But for now, let's stay here. Just you, your thoughts, your heartbeat, your breath. The world outside is still quiet. Your mind is still floating. And for the first time in a long time, you're not just surviving, you're softening. Which, ironically, might be the strongest thing you've ever done. So it's been a few years now. World War III came, sort of. It fizzled out somewhere between mass panic and reluctant cooperation. And somehow, against all expectations, the world didn't just keep spinning. It started sketching out a new version of itself, slowly, unevenly, and as always with questionable design choices. Welcome to the future, not the sleek chrome hovercar dystopia everyone expected. This one's a bit more, practical, a bit more homemade, less Jetsons, more solar-powered cottagecore. Let's talk about technology, the stuff that survived, not your smart fridge, not your AI toaster. No one's out here programming breakfast with voice commands anymore. But the essentials? Oh, they're thriving. Solar panels, water filters, wind turbines, batteries. Simple, durable, off-grid tech that doesn't crash when someone sneezes near the server farm. Phones still exist, but they're slower, calmer, less addictive. It turns out when your internet ration is 2 hours a day, you use it wisely. There's no doom scrolling anymore. Mostly because doom already happened. And honestly, we're all a bit over it. Now let's talk about transportation. No more traffic jams. No more commuting for 3 hours to sit at a desk and pretend to look busy. People walk, bike, ride on weird little electric carts someone soldered together in a shed with 12 zip ties and a prayer. Trains are back in style. Horses are making a suspicious comeback. And no one, Mrs. trying to find a parking spot at a shopping centre during Christmas. Cities aren't gone, but they've changed, shrunk, softened. They've stopped pretending to be machines and started acting like villages again. Local markets, public gardens, rooftop beehives, weird neighbourhood murals that may or may not be raccoons in hats. Skyscrapers aren't empty, they're recycled. Some are vertical farms, others are housing collectives. A few were turned into art galleries where people stare at paint and feel things because it's been a long decade, okay? Now education still exists, but better. Kids learn outdoors. They build things, fix things. Understand how stuff works. No more memorising the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, unless you're actually powering something with it. They grow up with dirt under their nails and purpose in their hands, which is more than you can say for most adults before the war. Speaking of which, adults, they've calmed down. Sort of. The endless rat race? Over. Because the rats unionised and declared they wanted to live near streams and eat berries in peace. Work now is about contribution, not competition. You don't clock in. You show up. You help. You build. You teach. You mend. You barter. You do what you can, and then you rest. Without guilt. And money? It still exists. In some places. But it's like that one cousin who only shows up at weddings. Familiar, slightly annoying, but tolerated. Most communities use local systems, skill trades, community credits, favours. One town literally uses buttons, like clothing buttons, and somehow it works. Now religion, philosophy, belief systems, all that got weird. In a good way. People started asking real questions again. Not in echo chambers, not through influencers, but in quiet conversations over firelight and soup. What do we believe? What matters? Who are we without our jobs, our screens, our weird obsession with pumpkin spice everything? Some turned to old traditions. Others made up new ones. There's a town that worships bread. Another that celebrates nap day once a week. Your mileage may vary, but at least no one's yelling about it online. And art? Oh, it bloomed. With nothing but time, emotion, and an unlimited supply of scrap metal, humans did what they've always done best when everything else breaks down. They made things. Music, sculpture, storytelling. Interpretive dance routines involving wheelbarrows. It's all back. Raw, honest, kind of bizarre, but full of soul. Even fashion changed. No more fast fashion. No more trends that last 17 minutes before being deemed chuggy. People wear what works, what lasts, what expresses who they are, not who they're trying to impress. And yes, capes are back, because someone declared it and no one stopped them. And what about governance? It's local, cooperative, less about power, more about logistics. Town halls, councils voting by show of hands under an oak tree. It's not perfect, people still disagree, still argue, still passive-aggressively rearrange each other's firewood stacks. But it's functional. And most importantly, it's human. And you've settled in. You wake with the sun, eat food that grew near your home. You talk to your neighbours more than you used to talk to your phone. You've lost interest in things like brand names and follow accounts. You've gained interest in weather patterns, soil quality, and that one goat down the road who keeps escaping and leading philosophical revolts against fences. You're calmer, still weird, but in a more wholesome, less existential crisis at 3 a.m. way. And at night you sit outside. Look up at the sky. It's still vast, still mysterious, still way too big to understand. But it doesn't scare you anymore. It comforts you. Because somehow, against all logic, the world broke. And then began again. In the next part, we'll explore memory. How people remember the war. The lessons passed down. The myths that form. And what humanity decides to keep. And what it chooses to finally let go. But for now, you're still. Your eyes are heavy. The fan hums gently in the background. And somewhere nearby, someone's strumming a guitar with 3 strings and a lot of heart. The future is strange, but it's soft, and you've never fit into it better. Time, as it tends to do, has passed. The smoke cleared, the buildings regrew vines, the barter markets evolved into villages. And now, years later, people begin to ask the question they were too tired to face before: what actually happened? Because memory is slippery, and humans, well, we're not known for our accuracy. We remember feelings, not facts. We exaggerate. We edit. We create narratives that make sense of the chaos, even if they're technically nonsense. And that's where the stories begin. At first, the memories are raw, sharp, first-hand accounts. People who remember the power going out, the silence, the fear, the long nights listening to static on the radio, while the sky stayed perfectly calm and terrifyingly quiet. But over time, those voices grow softer, older, and new ones step in, people who weren't there but heard about it. The ones who say things like, "My granddad lived through the blackout. He once traded a single Mars bar for a whole bicycle." You don't know if it's true. You don't question it. It's become legend now. And that's the thing. Disasters don't stay disasters forever. They turn into folklore. World War III stops being a list of dates and headlines. It becomes the time the world stopped. The time people started baking bread again. The time Aunt Lou built a greenhouse out of shopping trolleys. The time humanity lost everything, and then got weird and wholesome about it. Let's visit a classroom. A teacher stands at a blackboard. No smartboards, just chalk. She's explaining how the old world worked. The children squint in confusion. Wait, you had a car? For just you? And it didn't even run on potatoes? You had a job where you typed into a glowing rectangle for 8 hours and they paid you? Wait, you threw away food because it was expired? Like it still existed, but you just didn't want it. And the adults, they just laugh. Because history always sounds ridiculous when you weren't there for it. Museums pop up, some fancy, others built out of old shipping containers. Exhibits include burnt laptops, cracked smartphones, vending machines that don't work, and t-shirts that say things like "Live, Laugh, Love," which no one really understands anymore, but they feel vaguely emotional when they see it. There are songs, poems, plays. There's a whole musical about 2 strangers falling in love during a blackout, because one of them had working matches and the other had the last packet of instant oats. People start naming children after virtues again. Hope, grace, patience. There's a kid named Wi-Fi. No one knows if it's ironic or spiritual. Even language shifts. Words like influencer fall out of use. Productivity becomes something you apply to gardens, not people. Going viral is, once again, just a disease. And then there are the monuments. Not big stone statues of war heroes, but gardens. Murals. Quiet circles of benches under trees where people sit and reflect. Not on what was lost, but on what was found. In one village there's a wall covered in handprints. All ages, all sizes. It's called the Wall of We Stayed, and it means more than any speech ever could. People remember differently, depending on who they are. Some remember grief, some remember waiting, some remember the goat that ate their tent. Memory isn't fair, it's not accurate, but it's alive. And that's what matters. You see, forgetting is part of healing, but so is choosing what to remember. So humanity, in its messy brilliance, keeps the useful stuff and quietly lets the rest fade like an old bedtime story you only half remember. No one wants to remember the fear forever. But they do remember what it taught them. That stillness matters. That community is everything. That life, the messy, boring, beautiful kind, is worth protecting, even when it makes no sense. And you're part of that story. Not the war, not the politics, not the logistics, but the recovery, the remembering, the whisper that says, quietly, we made it. In the next part, we'll look at the new threats. Not missiles, not enemies, but comfort, complacency, the slow forgetting that always creeps in after peace settles in for too long. It won't be scary, it'll be gentle, like realising your blanket's slipping off your foot and you're too sleepy to fix it. But for now, rest. History is behind you, the future is ahead. And the present? Well, the present smells faintly of wood smoke, wildflowers, and possibly something your neighbour is cooking that they won't share. Typical. You're safe. You're still. You're part of the memory. And it's a good one, so years have passed. The world didn't just survive, it settled. People built, adapted, laughed again. Someone invented soup-flavoured bread. It was a mistake, but no one had the heart to say anything. But now, a new kind of threat has arrived. Not with sirens or smoke, not with boots or bombs. This one arrives in silence. It's called forgetting. Because here's the thing about humans, we're terrible at long-term memory, unless it's about something deeply petty, like who stole our lunch in year 8, or which cousin never paid us back for that festival ticket. Global disasters? We remember just enough to misquote them in future arguments. And that's what starts to happen. The sharp edges of the past soften. The terror, the pain, the urgency, all fade into bedtime stories, cautionary tales, and vaguely passive-aggressive art installations. People stop checking their emergency supplies, stop planting extra food. Someone starts talking about maybe bringing back stock markets. And everyone collectively side-eyes them like they've just suggested eating gravel for breakfast. It starts small. A joke, a shrug, a quiet, well, we've moved on. And in a way, they're right. Life is better. The sky's still blue. The grass is still stubbornly green. There's peace. But underneath that peace is softness. The kind that makes you forget the price it came with. You start seeing signs. People cut corners, take more than they give, talk over each other again, begin valuing shiny things over useful ones. Someone opens a shop selling artisanal dirt and calls it a luxury exfoliant. And you just know. We're back on the slippery slope of nonsense. It's not evil, it's not malicious, it's just human. We crave comfort. We love normal. We romanticize the past, even when it was objectively terrible. Someone starts calling the war the Little Reset, which is honestly the worst nickname since moist towelettes. The kids grow up hearing fragments of stories, the kind passed down in whispered half-truths. And eventually one brave teenager says, "It wasn't that bad, right?" And everyone else goes very quiet and starts stress-eating boiled potatoes. Because it was that bad. But now peace has made people forget that it wasn't inevitable, that it had to be fought for, rebuilt from, protected. This is where a different kind of hero appears. Not the warrior, not the farmer, not even the goat herder turned solar engineer. The memory keeper. You. The person who remembers not just the facts, but the feeling. You remember the way silence felt on day one. You remember the first time you saw green shoots growing from scorched ground. You remember how neighbours went from strangers to lifelines. You remember that peace isn't a finish line. It's a garden, constantly needing care, attention, and the occasional gentle reminder that, hey, maybe let's not repeat the entire collapse of society again. Cool. You're not trying to scare people. You're not preaching. You're just telling the story, keeping the truth warm, because that's the only way it stays alive. You write it down, paint it, whisper it, share it with the next generation, not to traumatize them, but to ground them, to make sure they know that all of this, the laughter, the clean air, The soup with questionable ingredients, it matters. And more importantly, it's fragile. So fragile, in fact, that the strongest thing in the world isn't a weapon, or a government, or even an angry goose with territorial issues. It's memory, carried from one person to the next like a flame, not to burn but to light the way. And the world listens, slowly, quietly, like it's waking up from a dream of normalcy and remembering that the only reason normal exists is because someone made sure it did. In the next part, we'll explore the most human thing of all, legacy. What gets left behind, not just in buildings or systems, but in hearts, in habits, in bedtime stories whispered under the stars. But for now, breathe. You're still here. The sky is still quiet. The world has forgotten a little, but you haven't, and that's enough. So now we ask the last big question. What stays? After the panic, the rebuilding, the weird era of goat-based transportation. What remains when the dust settles, the years pass, and the last emergency broadcast fades into memory? It's not the bunkers, it's not the firewood spreadsheets, it's not even the hand-crank blender someone tried to patent with terrifying confidence. It's legacy, but not the loud kind. We're not talking about bronze statues with inaccurate facial features or plaques with inspiring quotes that sound like someone copied a Pinterest board at gunpoint. We're talking about the quiet things, the things that last because they matter, not because anyone declared they should. Like the garden you planted, the one that started with 4 sad carrots and turned into a patch of green chaos that somehow feeds 10 people and a very aggressive rabbit. Or the story you told every night to your neighbour's kid when their parents were too tired to keep pretending everything was fine. The one about the fox and the moon and the soup that fixed broken hearts. Or the path between houses you cleared after the storm, not because anyone asked, but because it was raining. And you were already outside. And it just felt right. Those things matter. More than systems. More than speeches. Because legacy isn't made of steel. It's made of kindness repeated until it echoes across generations. Years from now, someone will tell a story that starts with, "Back when the world stopped." And they won't remember your name. They won't know how many nights you spent wondering if it would all come crashing down again. But they'll live in a world you helped shape, even if your only tool was a shovel, a joke, or a warm meal shared at the right moment. And that's legacy. Let's talk about culture. It changes, of course. That's what culture does. But this time it grows from the ground up. No more manufactured trends, no more algorithms deciding what we care about. It's slower, messier, richer. People pass on songs, handmade instruments, ceremonies invented in community halls and passed down with a wink and a plate of lentils. Language shifts too. Words like rush become less important. Words like share, hold, and enough become sacred. And names? Oh, the names. You start hearing babies named after the strangest things. Dawn, ash, river, hope, silence, bramble, toast. You ask, toast? And someone says she was born the day the oven worked again. Fair enough. Legacy lives in these weird details. The rituals, the recipes, the old man who still wears the jacket he fixed a dozen times with scraps of other jackets. The child who grows up knowing how to repair a solar panel before they learn long division. The weekly meal everyone shares not because they have to, but because they want to. It lives in the way people greet each other, with honesty, with care, with the kind of eye contact that says I see you, instead of I'm pretending to listen while mentally reciting a to-do list. And there's art, of course. Legacy loves art. Murals bloom across walls like memory itself. Some tell stories, some just feel like survival. There's a sculpture made of melted spoons that everyone agrees means something, but no one agrees what. That's the point. And you've probably forgotten the moment you started building a legacy, because it didn't come with fanfare. It started on a Tuesday, while you were tired, and still did the thing anyway. You held someone's hand. You showed someone how to plant beans. You listened when no one else would. Legacy is what we do when no one's watching. It's the tiny moments that stack up like stones into something real. In the next part, we'll begin to close our journey, reflect on everything we've imagined. Consider how fragile peace really is, and how maybe that's what makes it precious. But not yet. For now, you're resting in a future built on stories. A soft, strange, hopeful world full of people who still make soup, still plant seeds, and still laugh even when the power's out. Sleep easy. The world remembers, even if it doesn't always realise it. And you're part of the reason it does. Peace is a strange thing. It's not loud. It doesn't make announcements. It doesn't barge in wearing a crown and demand applause. It just shows up, quietly, like a cat that decides to trust you. One moment the world is a collection of near misses and long silences, and the next it's settled. Not fixed, not perfect, just calm. And here's the hard truth. Peace is fragile. Not like glass. Glass breaks. Peace drifts, slips, gets misplaced in meetings and forgotten in the corners of good intentions. People don't usually destroy peace on purpose. They just stop tending to it. Like a plant you were definitely going to re-water after that one episode of your show, and now it's crisp, sad, and clinging to one tiny leaf like it's trying to rebrand as a cactus. That's what makes peace so valuable. Because when you know something can vanish, you take better care of it. You pay attention. You hold it with both hands. And in this new world, this post-World War III world, that care becomes a lifestyle. People don't wait for someone else to protect the peace. They practice it every day. Peace isn't a treaty. It's a behaviour. It's in the way people speak to each other. The patience in their voices, the space between words, the willingness to let someone else finish their sentence, even if it takes longer than your attention span is used to. It's in conflict resolution that doesn't involve shouting, but rather a quiet meeting over tea and a passive-aggressive scone. It's in the shared silence around a fire, where people don't have to fill the space with noise, because peace also sounds like nothing at all. And yes, even after the war, even after the rebuilding, there are still tensions, arguments, stubbornness. Humanity is still human. But the scale is different. People catch themselves. Remember what's at stake. You'll see someone about to start a pointless fight, then stop, breathe and say, "Never mind, let's go tend the compost bin." And just like that, the fire fizzles before it starts. Because when you've seen the edge, really looked over the side of civilization and peered into the abyss of what could have been, you stop treating stability like a default setting. You realise it's a choice, over and over and over again. Some people wear small pins, nothing fancy, just a little symbol, a leaf, a circle, a flicker of light to say I remember, not to brag, not to guilt, just to quietly promise, I'll keep watering this thing. Others write journals, not for publishing, not for fame, just to process, to hold the peace on paper. Some pages are tear-stained, others are doodles of goats in top hats. Both are equally important. And the youth? They grow up with no memory of war, just whispers, murals, the occasional elder staring off at nothing in the middle of a thunderstorm. To them, peace is all they've ever known. And that's terrifying, because it means they don't know what it cost. But also, it's beautiful, because it means the cost was worth it. They build forward with gentleness, not from fear but from trust. They innovate, but not recklessly. They dream, but not carelessly. They live not in spite of what happened, but because of what was saved. And you keep going. You learn to trust again, love again, joke again, even when your jokes are terrible. Especially when your jokes are terrible. You learn that peace isn't static. It wiggles, it stretches, it needs space. It also needs you, to speak kindly, to rest without guilt, to wake up each day and decide not to contribute to the noise. In the next and final part, we'll come back to the beginning, back to the idea, the question, the curiosity that started it all. We'll step out of the fiction, just a little, and leave you with a gentle thought about why we imagine these things in the first place. But for now, you're here, you're safe. The world is quiet, and the plant on your windowsill is thriving. Because somehow so are you, so. We've walked through the apocalypse together, from sirens and silence to barter systems and burnt soup, to rebirth and the strange comfort of goat-based local governance. We've imagined panic, survival, beauty, grief, joy, all from the warmth of your blanket and the glow of a soft screen. And now, here we are, You're still lying there. The room is quiet. Maybe your eyes are closed. Maybe you're one blink away from dreamland. And the world, both the one outside your window and the one we built here, is still spinning. Which brings us to the question, why? Why do we imagine this? Why take something so heavy, so terrifying, global war, and wrap it in sleepy words and sarcastic thoughts and quiet storytelling? The answer is simple, because imagining the worst helps us understand what we value the most. It's not about fear, it's about perspective. We dream about the end of the world not because we want it to happen, but because deep down, we need to remember what matters, if it ever did. We imagine the power going out just to realise how much light we take for granted. We picture empty shelves just to appreciate full ones. We pretend the system breaks down just to remember the humans behind it. The kindness, the laughter, the weirdness, the resilience. And maybe, just maybe, we tell bedtime apocalypse stories because they make the current chaos feel a little less final, a little less loud, a little more survivable. This was never really about World War III. It was about you, the way your mind wandered through it, the way you stayed curious even in catastrophe, the way you found calm, not in denial, but in awareness. You're not powerless, you're not doomed, you're just human, which is possibly the most hopeful thing you can be, because humans are ridiculous, flawed, brilliant little creatures with the uncanny ability to ruin everything. And then, for no logical reason at all, fix it with tape, teamwork, and a sourdough starter named Gary. So here's what we leave you with. Not a warning, not a prediction, just a gentle suggestion. Remember what we imagined, carry it softly, let it shape how you greet the world tomorrow. A little more awake, a little more kind, a little more grateful for the things that haven't ended. Your home, your breath, your chance to build something better. So sleep now. Let the static hum. Let the fans spin. Let your thoughts slow to a trickle, like the last drops of rain on a tin roof after a long storm. You're safe. You're still. And the world, the real one, the imperfect one, the one with bad weather apps and loud magpies, is still worth dreaming for. Good night, apocalypse survivor. You did great. So, we've made it to the quiet after the quiet, the part where even the echoes have settled, where the dust from the past no longer clings to your shoes, just softens into the cracks of the path you're walking. There's no more rebuilding to do, no more goats to name after celebrities, no more barter systems to haggle over with that one neighbour who always insisted his socks were premium grade. This is life now, simple, stable, satisfyingly weird. And it's here, in this deep, calm lull between apocalypse and whatever comes after, that something even stranger begins to grow. A future you didn't plan for, not the kind drawn up in boardrooms or voted on by dusty parliaments with bad microphones. This one grows out of whispers, murmurs, gut feelings, campfire stories. It's a future shaped by people who stopped asking what's next and started asking what do we want? Turns out that question is a lot harder, because building after destruction is easy in a way. There's urgency, necessity, clear objectives like don't starve or don't step on radioactive mushrooms. But building when everything is okay, that's trickier. That's where comfort sneaks in and laziness stretches out and someone starts a business selling artisanal air because vibes. And that's where this new chapter begins. Not with a bang, not with a speech, with a question, what kind of world do we leave behind? The people who lived through it, the blackouts, the barter markets, the aggressive geese, they still carry the memory. But the kids, the new generation, they only know the stories, the bedtime versions, the quiet kind with less fear and more metaphors, the ones where the war is a storm that passed and everything since has been one long sunrise. And that's beautiful, but also a little dangerous, because when the storm is too far away, people forget how loud thunder can be. That's where the next great challenge sneaks in, teaching peace without trauma, passing on lessons without turning them into bedtime dread. How do you raise children in a post-war world without making them afraid of it? You teach them care. Not caution, not paranoia, not conspiracy theory podcasts hosted by raccoons with microphones. Care for the soil, care for their neighbours, care for how their words land, how their actions ripple, how their choices matter, even if no one's watching. You teach them to ask not, can I do this, but should I? Not, what can I get away with, but what will I leave behind? You teach them that legacy isn't some plaque on a wall. It's the tone you use when someone's scared. It's how you behave when you think no one will remember. And slowly that idea spreads. Not like wildfire, that's dramatic and exhausting. More like moss, quiet, persistent, beautiful. It grows across the culture, a gentle stubbornness, a refusal to go backward. You see it in the way people pause before they speak, the way they thank the wind for showing up on hot days, the way they build playgrounds that double as rainwater collectors, because who says practical can't be fun? The world has grown softer, not weaker, just less impressed by noise. You see it in art, in the murals that still bloom across buildings, even years later. No slogans, no marketing. Just stories told in colour, on walls, in places where people can look up and feel. Not think, not analyse, just feel. You see it in work. No one's trying to climb the ladder anymore, mostly because the ladders are being used for orchard maintenance and roof repairs, but also because people don't want higher. They want deeper, more rooted, more connected. Less burnout, more, I think I'll actually enjoy the rain today. You see it in relationships. Less performance, less curated, more raw, more quiet, more real. People still break up, sure, it's not a utopia. It's a functioning society. But when they do, they say things like, I still respect you, and actually mean it. Weird, right? Even holidays have changed. There's a new one called Still Here Day. It's not loud. There are no fireworks. People just light candles, share food, and tell one story, any story, about something they almost lost but didn't. A person, a place, a dream, a memory. It's oddly beautiful, and a little awkward. And that's exactly the point. Because the new world isn't trying to be perfect, just intentional. And you've grown too. You're not the same person who lay in bed hearing the word war and wondering if the fridge still worked. You're not the same person who rationed toilet paper like it was gold leaf and prayed for a working kettle. You're softer, wiser, a bit more wrinkly in the best kind of way. You've stopped rushing, stopped apologising for resting. You've learnt the quiet art of holding space, of offering presence instead of solutions, of being the kind of person who makes other people breathe easier just by showing up. And tonight you lie here, in a world rebuilt not just with tools and food and water, but with kindness, with awkward jokes, with long hugs and bad singing, and a communal agreement that it's okay to be weird, as long as you're kind about it. Tomorrow you'll plant something, or mend something, or listen to a child explain how their imaginary friend runs the local post office. Tonight, you'll just rest, you've earned it. The world, for all its stubborn flaws, is trying. And so are you. That's enough. In the next part, we'll look at what happens generations from now, when this story becomes myth, when peace becomes background noise, and when humanity inevitably asks again, what's next? But for now, let it go. The night is still. The air is kind. And peace, quiet, humble, sleepy peace, is holding your hand. Generations have passed. The war is long gone. The people who lived it, stories now. Names in journals, smiles in faded photographs stuck to fridges that no longer refrigerate, but are still good at holding magnets. The world has grown into something new. Not rebuilt, reimagined. Not restored, re-rooted. And yet, the questions return. Because humans are nothing if not wonderfully predictable. Give us enough time and quiet and we'll eventually look around and say, okay, but what if everything went horribly wrong again? It starts, as these things always do, with curiosity. A child sits beside their grandparent, roasting something vaguely edible over a fire, and asks, is it true the sky used to be too dirty to see the stars? And the grandparent chuckles, not because it's funny, but because it's so absurdly true. Then come more questions. Did people really go to work every day just to stare at screens? Why did they keep burning things they knew were bad for the planet? Wait, they made water in bottles and then threw the bottles where? And finally, why did the war start? That one's harder, because by now the details have blurred. The names, the flags, the reasons. It's all melted into something vague, like a dream you remember in feelings but not in sequence. People don't know which side launched what, or which hacker did what to which grid. But they remember the feeling of the world teetering, the hush, the breath that never fully left the lungs. And that's what gets passed down. Not data, emotion. Legacy in its softest, strongest form. New myths form. Not lies, just polished truths. Stories with smoother edges. The kind kids can hear at bedtime and still fall asleep. There's the tale of the city that went dark and lit itself again with candlelight and hope. The story of the couple who met at a trade station while fighting over a can of peaches and ended up starting a mushroom farm together. The legend of the Goat King who ruled a small valley with questionable diplomacy and excellent cheese. Some of it happened, some of it didn't. That's not the point. The point is that these stories remind people that it all happened once, and it could again. But it doesn't have to. You see, peace isn't a permanent setting. It's a choice, made again and again and again, in moments so small they're barely noticeable. When someone shares their last slice of bread, when a community decides to build a bench instead of a fence, when a leader says, "I don't know," and means it. That's how peace stays alive. Not by being enforced, but by being invited. And sometimes then peace is forgotten. Even in this new world with its slower pace and goat-themed currency and weekly jam-making competitions, the old shadows stir. Not loud, not angry, just persistent. Someone builds a drone. Someone else starts a rumour. Someone else wants to be the most. And for a second, the world holds its breath again. But this time it catches itself. Because someone stands up and says, "No, we're not doing that again." And the world, remembering everything it tried to forget, listens. It takes just one voice, one gentle reminder, one memory carried like a seed in the pocket of time, ready to bloom. That's your legacy. You were the seed carrier. You were the story keeper. You lived through the worst idea humanity ever flirted with. And instead of hardening, you softened. You chose stillness. You chose kindness. And now, long after your name is spoken only once a year, during a holiday where people wear silly hats and eat too much stew, your story still breathes. In the way people gather, in the way they speak softly at dusk, in the way they don't take the stars for granted. They don't know it, but you taught them. Not with speeches, not with awards, but with your choice to stay soft in a world that once begged for sharpness. So here we are, at the edge of the story. Not an ending. Not really. Just the moment before the next moment. Let it all go. The world is still here. And so are you. Sleep easy, memory keeper. We made it.